Warframe is a grind game, and it has tons of important loot to focus on. We all know that. However, making sense of all of this, well, that can be a little bit overwhelming at times. So, in this video, I'm gonna show you the best and most profitable missions to farm all the resources, items, and upgrades that you need for your account, both for beginners, veteran players, and everyone in between. Big shout out to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. Cheers also to our generous channel members as always. And now, let's go. Okay, starting out, I want with some easy farms. I don't necessarily want to call them beginner farms because they're still pretty viable later on in the game, but they're also quite accessible and easy to pull off. The first of which would be Maru's Ayatan treasure hunt. Once you unlock Mars, you can unlock Maru's Bazaar, and when you talk to Maru, then she will have one special mission for you per week called Ayatan Treasure Hunt, and this mission takes around about 2 minutes to complete. It's very quick, but you're guaranteed to get an Ayatan treasure as a reward at the end. These, you can then take them to your mod collection in your orbiter and insert Ayatan stars into them, which will turn them into a decorative item that can be sold back to Maru for between 1500 and 2500 Endo. That is a great early and mid-game source for getting thousands of Endo, because all you need to do is play this mission for 2 minutes once per week. So as long as you're not swimming in Endo, definitely always do this. The next thing I want to talk about, also accessible very early on in the game, would be open world bounties. These combine some of the most necessary resources for your progression. On the one hand, basically every bounty reward table has some amount of Endo in it, which is very much appreciated, especially early on in the game, but bounties at the same time are the prime way to farm Aya, which is a resource that you need later to gain certain prime items and prime sets. My personal favorite here would be the Deimos bounties, because in the mid-range levels, I think the 40 to 60 range it was, from that point on, they start to have drop tables including 1000 Endo, which makes it a very, very good way to stock up on Endo in the mid-game. On top of that, of course, there are also exclusive mods that you can get only from playing the bounties, such as the Vigilante, the Augur, and the Hunter mod set from the Plains of Eidolon, very important mods in those sets, the Synth Mecha and Tech set in the Orb Vallis, and also here, especially the ones on Deimos, have some of the most important mods in the game in the form of Blood Rush and Weeping Wounds. You need those for most melee builds in the game. Now, even though open worlds are accessible pretty early in the game, especially the higher level bounties are still gonna be a bit tough. Something though that you can do literally on your first day of playing would be the next farm, which is great to stock you up on early game credits, and that would be Dark Sector missions. See, Dark Sector missions are a specific type of mission which you can identify on the star map by this specific icon right here. Every planet has one or two of them. The special thing about those is that you get a little bit more in terms of resource drops from playing them, but the main thing here is that they give you significantly more credits as a mission reward compared to your standard mission. I'm talking 25 to 30,000 credits for completion. However, I don't want you to jump into the mission and farm it for hours. Instead, what you want to do is make it a habit that your first mission after login every day is one run of a Dark Sector mission. That is because the first mission of the day in Warframe will always reward you with double credits, and if you make it a Dark Sector mission that pays, let's say, 25,000, that means you can literally make 50,000 credits as a very, very early game player by just playing a 5-minute mission. That is by far the best way to get credits until you unlock the more optimized ways later in the game. And speaking of those, of course, we have the one and only Index. This one, I would still consider it a pretty easy farm in 2026 because you unlock it on Neptune already, and this is the first mission in the game where you can really hardcore farm credits. If you do it right, then one run takes between 5 and 10 minutes and can net you up to 250,000 credits, 500,000 if you have a booster. Now, to be fair, in 2026, this is not the most optimized way of farming credits anymore, but it is very convenient to do and still pretty competitive. But now that we've taken care of all your money issues, let's talk about an arguably even more important thing, and that would be mods. To be more precise, corrupted ones. See, corrupted mods are those mods that have one positive and one negative stats. I'm talking about something like Blind Rage, Transient Fortitude, stuff that you literally see on every single Warframe build in the game. These mods are not only incredibly important to make your builds much stronger, but they're also always in high demand, meaning if you farm them, then you can literally turn them into platinum by selling them off to other players. All you need to do is play the normal missions on demos, not the open world, the star chart ones. For this, I would recommend the capture node, and then what you gotta do is find a door that looks like this in the mission. There's a guaranteed spawn for one of these doors in this tile set, and then you need a matching dragon key to open it up, which will then give you one random corrupted mod as a reward at the mission's end. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go into the great details on every specific farm because the video would take forever, but maybe at some point in the future, I'm gonna make a dedicated guide for specifically this corrupted mod farm. And then the last thing that is very easy to do, but incredibly profitable, would of course be the Nightwave. This is Warframe's version of a free battle pass, and it comes with refreshing daily and weekly tasks. Depending on how far you are into the game, you might not be able to always complete everything, but on the other hand, you also don't have to, because the most helpful items tend to already be in the first third of the progression path. I would say make it a habit to check out which missions are available in the Nightwave every week so you can make small and incremental progress. And as always, if you could leave a quick like for the video, that would be really nice because it always helps big time with the YouTube algorithm. Cheers so much for your support! Okay, the first specific farm that I want to talk about here would be something that you unlock sometime in the mid-game when you complete the Uranus Junction, and that would be Duviri. To gain access to everything related to Duviri, you need to finish the Duviri Paradox quest, which, as I said, you unlock by doing the Uranus Junction. This will then open up multiple game modes for you, but I want to focus on one specific one, and that would be the Duviri Circuit. This is an endless mode of varying challenges that also has somewhat of a roguelike element by providing random buffs to you. The main reason why I personally recommend it though is that you can get a whole bunch of very useful stuff out of it. Every week there are different rewards in rotation. You can pick one of these reward paths every week, and the special thing here is that it allows you to farm certain Warframes in a very quick and streamlined manner that might otherwise take absolute ages to farm because they are a pain. I'm talking specifically about people like, Harrow for example. You wouldn't want to farm him the regular way, believe me. However, not only does the circuit streamline Warframe farms, no, in addition to those Warframes, you also gain valuable resources and upgrades at the same time. Looking at the Warframes, some of them have augment mods that you sort of want to have if you want to build them properly, and if you farm them via the Duviri Circuit, then oftentimes those augments are already part of the reward path for said Warframe. So not only do you get the full set, easy and streamlined, you get the necessary augments at the same time. It's great, and I would highly recommend you take a look at it every week to see if there's anything you need. And as if that's not enough, there is of course also a Steel Path version for the later game players. I think we all know what I'm getting at. The Steel Path circuit is the one and only location in the game where you can farm Incarnon adapters. And Incarnon adapters are the items that you need to turn certain weapons into their Incarnon forms, the strongest weapon type in the entire game. Like, they literally rain death from above on any type of enemy. And if you like bombarding the enemy from above, then you will love today's sponsor, War Thunder. That's right, baby, I'm talking the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, available now for free on PC, consoles, and mobile devices, featuring 2,500 playable tanks, planes, helicopters, and battleships across 10 different nations, ranging from historic biplanes of the 1920s all the way up to modern-day fighter jets and main battle tanks. See, with its realistic graphics and immersive sound design, War Thunder simply is your one-stop shop for high-quality PvP vehicle combat, and 95 million players worldwide agree. I personally highly recommend the air battles in realistic mode, where you really need to take advantage of aerodynamics to get your crosshairs in on the opponent. Play War Thunder now for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile devices, and sign up using my links in the description or the pinned comment. New players and those who haven't played in 6 months will receive a massive bonus pack on PC and consoles for a limited time only, including 7 days of premium account, 100,000 Silver Lions of in-game currency, and an exclusive vehicle decorator, Eagle of Valor, for that extra bit of drip. But okay, Let's now get into probably the most prominent farm for both early and late game players. If you want to have a nice arsenal of prime weapons and warframes, get your hands on all the types of different prime mods in the game, or maybe just sell a bunch of valuable stuff for platinum, then this right here is your way to go. What I'm talking about is, of course, cracking prime relics and then praying that you get something valuable out of them. The first question here, of course, would be how to obtain those relics in the first place, and there are a couple of farms that are very optimized. First of all, we have the aforementioned open world bounties. In those, you get Aya, which in turn can be turned into void relics itself. This is a good thing to do if you have something to farm in the open worlds already. Then, when it comes to Lith relic farms, go for the mission Hepit in the Void. That's a capture mission, so you can speedrun it very easily, and you almost get a Lith relic as a reward every single time. You can condense one of these runs to under 2 minutes, and that means you get a bunch of relics from just repeating that all over again. Same thing, by the way, goes for Meso and Neo relics. Those can also be very streamlined with the capture mission Uko in the Void. However, if you need a change of scenery, which is totally understandable, then you can also farm Lith relics in the disruption mission Olympus on Mars in the A and B rotation. For Meso relics, on Uranus is kinda sorta the same thing. And if you want to get Neo or the rarer Axii relics, then the best place to farm those, especially for the Axii ones, would be the mission Apollo on Lua. Oh yeah, and if you don't feel like farming, you can of course always go to your syndicates and just spend your syndicate standing on relic packs. Those would be the, in my opinion, best ways to get relics. As for how to crack them open, you want to look into your list of Fisher missions and ideally find something that is relatively quick and easy to do. You know, I'm talking about capture, exterminate, those type of things. When you crack relics, always make sure to crack them in a group, because you can pick freely which of the rewards you want to have. More people in the team means higher chances of rare rewards. If you want to optimize that even more, there's a thing called Rad Share, which means you're searching for a team where everybody has a maximally refined Radiant relic, and ideally also always the same relic, so you can really hardcore farm one specific set. Bonus points, of course, if you find an Omni Fisher, because that is a relic cracking mission where you can bring any type of relic. And what are you going to do with all those prime items that you got out of the relic? Well, you can either sell them to other players for platinum, or if you have quote-unquote prime trash that's not worth anything, you go to a relay, interact with this console right here and turn it into ducats. This is a currency that you can spend at the Void Trader Baroque tier to get your hands on prime mods and exclusive items. Let's now go from this very profitable farm to, in my opinion, probably the most essential game mode that you need to play if you ever want to enter into late game. And that would be Arbitrations. First of all, in order to get access to them, you need to complete the Eris Junction, so they are relatively at the end of the star chart. The reason why you want to play them is that they give you a resource called Vitus Essence. They're the only place in the game where you can farm it. This Vitus Essence, then, is the resource that you need to get access to Galvanized mods. And Galvanized mods are one of the most important types of mods in the game. Without them, you're gonna be lost. On top of that, Arbitrations are also an absolutely excellent farm for Endo, because not only do they have really good Endo drops in their normal reward pool, they also give you tons of Ayatan statues. Remember what we said in the very beginning of the video, Maru's treasure hunt, where you can get one of these statues per week? Well, if you run Arbitrations, you can get multiple of these statues per hour, and then turn them all into Endo, which is huge! The way Arbitrations work is actually pretty darn simple. They're technically just normal endless mission types. Only difference here is that the enemy level is a little bit higher. They start between enemy level 60 and 80, and there is a specific enemy type called Arbitration Drone. These things are your priority targets, because not only do they drop you even more Vitus Essence, but they also make nearby enemies invincible, so you want to take them out as fast as you can. To maximize the Vitus Essence drops that you get from them, I would highly recommend getting a Resource Blessing from a relay and bring a Beast-type companion with the Resourceful Retriever mod. If you want to spend a little bit of platinum, then you can also go for a Resource or a Resource Drop Chance booster to increase the yield even more. Now, I could talk more about which weapon Warframe team combinations are the most optimized, like you can really optimize the ever-living heck out of this mission type if you want to. But really, if you just casually want to play it in a random lobby, that is good enough for 95% of players out there. Maybe one day I'm going to make a dedicated arbitration guide where we can get into the nitty-gritty a bit more. Let me know in the comments down below if you want to see that. Let's next talk about something that is a little bit later in the game still, and that would be your daily sortie and your weekly Archon hunt. First of all, the sortie, you unlock that when you finish the War Within quest. This is a daily activity, a series of 3 missions in a row, and it has some very specific and great drops for you. Mainly, this is usually the first farm that a player encounters where they can actually get Rivens, a chance of 25% if you want to know. However, on top of Rivens, which can be very valuable if you get lucky with the roll, sorties also can give you even more Ayatan statues that you can turn into Endo, or Endo directly, or a bunch of Kuva, and a lot of other great stuff. As for the Archon hunt, you unlock that a little bit later in the story, after you finish the Veilbreaker quest, and this is essentially a sortie on steroids. You could do it once per week, and it culminates in an epic battle against an Archon. At base, this will give you the same type of rewards that sorties also give, just a little bit more of everything. However, Archon hunts are guaranteed to also drop you an Archon shard at the end. This is one of the most valuable upgrade items in the game because you can't trade it with other players and you can only always get a limited quantity per week. So, if you want to have the ultimate power in the game, Archon hunts are definitely a thing you don't want to miss out on. Okay, let's next talk about the one game mode that the community collectively probably likes the least on this list, and that would be Railjack. Now, Railjack, the game mode itself, could be unlocked relatively early on by finishing the Rising Tide quest, but if you really want to farm it efficiently and get the most out of it, then you need to do a little bit of investment. However, I still think it's very much worth it. So, what does Railjack give you that makes it so good? Well, first of all, Railjack has a bunch of specific Railjack resources, and unlike other resources, these really don't have much use outside of Railjack. However, one thing you can use them for is feeding your helmet. That's a great usage because it means you don't need to waste your actually valuable resources on him. In addition to that, Railjack missions are actually pretty good for credit farming. Especially the later nodes can easily yield you over 100,000 just for a simple mission completion. It's of course not the best credit farm in the game, but it's definitely a nice bonus on top. Similar to credits, you can also get a surprising amount of Endo for playing Railjack. Also here, not the best Endo farm in the game, but if you consider that you get all of these different things at the same time, it starts to become more and more attractive. The way the Endo part here works is that by playing these missions, you will get drops for specific Railjack components, and those can either then repaired to be integrated in your personal Railjack, or alternatively you can just scrap them for Endo, and as you see in the background right here, they sell for quite a lot. Sounds good? Well, I'm not even done yet, because, as I said in a previous chapter, farming relics is overall one of the best things you can do in the game, and guess what? You can crack relics in Railjack missions, so you get everything that I mentioned so far, all while at the same time doing the stuff that you might want to do anyway, which is cracking your relics for prime parts and ducats. I think if you don't explicitly hate playing Railjack, it's definitely worth it to invest a couple of hours in getting your Railjack up to speed so you can farm this very underrated game mode. The next point on our list is not one farm, but actually 2 in 1, and I also want to explain why that is. What I'm talking about here is Eidolon hunts as well as Profit Taker. Both of these farms are very profitable, and they used to be the very peak of Warframe endgame activities a couple of years ago. However, they do have one downside. Yes, it is true that they are very profitable and still are. However, unlike newer mission types, these 2 in specific need quite some setup and also a little bit of practice and mechanical skill to pull off successfully. For a newer player, this can be pretty scary. And the same is true for the Profit Taker. This is a great farm for credits. If you do everything right, then you can get up to 1,000,000 credits in just a couple of minutes. But also here, you need a specific setup with Chroma as a Warframe for his effigy skill that increases credit drops, specific weapon Warframe elemental combinations, a Necromech, this, that, everything. I don't want to sit here and say that these mission types fell off or that they're not viable anymore, because that would simply be untrue, but nowadays you're not forced to engage with them anymore if you want those rewards. Still wanted to mention them though, because I think it is worth giving them a shot to see if maybe they do resonate with you. Okay, up next, I would like to direct your attention to 3 locations in the world, and those will be the Zermonten Zero, the Undermines under Fortuna, as well as the Sanctum Anatomica. These 3 tilesets have one thing in common, and that is that they all have a local syndicate. This means, similar to open world bounties, there are also bounty missions that you can play in these tilesets. However, these have quite some nice rewards. Just to make an example, on the Zeramantin Zero for instance, we're looking at bounty rotations of thousands over thousands of Endo, Aya drops, greater focus lenses, and much more. Then the Nightcap bounties. Right here, we have another very strong reward pool with tons and tons of arcanes that you can get for playing these bounties. On top of that, you can also get the specific resource Fergolite that you can then again exchange with Nightcap for stuff like more arcanes, parts for Noko for your Archon arcane adapters, and much more. And lastly, as I said, we also have the Sanctum Anatomica, where, again, similarly to the aforementioned ones, here too you get thousands of Endo, Aya, greater lenses, and much more. Overall, I would say if you don't want to sweat all too hard and you like to have a bit of a change of scene now and then rotating between those locations is a very good way to stock up on a lot of valuable resources. So, this next location right now is probably the most bountiful loot cave in the entirety of Warframe at the moment. Originally, I actually wanted to add it to the previous chapter because it goes in the same direction, but this one is so much more profitable in so many ways that I thought, you know what, I'll just give it its own chapter, and that would be Höllvania in its entirety. Just like what we mentioned before, also Höllvania has a rotation of bounties, and in those bounties, just like for the bounties before, you get a ton of Endo-specific resources, all that good stuff. However, Höllvania has so much more to offer. There would be, for example, the weekly calendar that you can access via the Kim terminal in your orbiter. As you can see in the background right here, there are different rewards that you can access through this calendar. You get stuff like Orokin catalysts and reactors, things that otherwise are incredibly rare. Maybe Rivens, sometimes even Archon shards, and it is so quick and easy to do. But, as if that's not enough, Höllvania also introduced a brand new way of farming tons of Endo. I personally learned this from a video that WarframeFlo made, so big shoutouts to him. I'm gonna link that up in the card so you can check it out later if you like. But what I'm talking about here with the Endo farm is potency mods. These things are needed to farm your Technocyte Coda, to get your specific Coda type weapons, and you usually get a bunch of them very quickly. Thing is here, you can also just dissolve them into Endo, and they give quite some. But that's still not it. As I just said, Höllvania is also the home of the Infested Liches, the Technocyte Coda, and that means you get the Infested Lich weapons also by playing in Höllvania, which nicely overlaps with all the things that we already mentioned. And then last but definitely not least, remember how I said that the Profit Taker used to be the best credit farm in the game? That mode got some steep competition. See, in Techrot missions in Höllvania, you have the chance to stumble upon a biosave. This is a purple marker on your map, and what you need to do to open it up is find a nearby key, and then it will drop you 100,000 credits by default. If we play as Chroma and use his skill Effigy, we have a chance to double that to 200,000. If we have a booster too, that makes it 400 grand, and if we get lucky and that pickup gets boosted by the Prosperous Retriever mod on your companion, then we're looking at potentially 800,000 credits for just opening this container. Downside here is, it's a little bit difficult to find those containers, so what you're looking out for in specific is, if there is a bounty on the Höllvania board that, as its objective, forces you to open up this save, then you're guaranteed to find that save in the mission. So if that's the case, and you need credits, then go and grind your eyes out. It's incredibly profitable. Okay, up next I want to talk about one of the more challenging, more endgame modes in the game, and that would be Deep and Temporal Archimedea. The video is already long enough, so I'm not going to get that much into the details. I'm planning on making a dedicated Archimedea guide in the future. But basically what it comes down to is, these are two modes that you can also run once per week. They have pretty high enemy levels, talking about 300 to 500. However, they do have great rewards. You're almost guaranteed to get a bunch of Archon shards out of them, of all types and colors, and on top of that, they also give you rare arcanes. The way this works is that the mission itself limits you to only a couple of Warframes and weapons that you're allowed to choose, and in addition, it offers you certain debuffs that make the missions even more challenging. Only if you pick the right weapons and Warframes that the game wants you to, and choose all the debuffs on top, then these Archimedea game modes can be insanely profitable. The Deep Archimedea, by the way, is available through the Sanctum Anatomica, and then the Temporal Archimedea brings us back to Höllvania, which we just talked about, because that is where this takes place. So far, we've gone through a bunch of different game modes, and almost all of them had some form of Endo drop on the side. However, if you need a bunch of Endo, and I mean thousands per hour continuously, then there is exactly one mission in the game where you can make that happen, and that would be Vodyanoi on Sedna. Also here, I do want to make a dedicated guide on just this alone, because it requires quite some setup, team composition, and ideally a pre-made team, but just to keep it very, very simple, what this is essentially an arena team deathmatch game mode against the Grineer. What your goal here is to play it in Steel Path, because that increases the drop chance even further, have a mod drop chance booster, yes, Endo is considered a mod, not a resource, and then you go in with a pre-made team of 2 Necros, 1 Nidus, and 1 Korra, which, if done right and super optimized, will allow you to finish this mission in under 2 minutes and potentially can yield you up to 4,000 Endo. On average, you get 2,000 to 3,000 in one of these sub 2 minute runs. This is very grindy and sweaty, but let me tell you, there is not a single location in the game where you can get this much Endo. But now that you have all the Endo in the world, let's talk about the newest addition to this list, which would be the Descendia game mode that was added to Warframe in the December update. To unlock this game mode, you need to finish the Old Peace quest, and then you can access it through the Dark Refractory. Similar to many other modes on today's list, the Descendia is also a weekly mode where you fight yourself through 21 floors of randomized missions with additional random modifiers. A full run of this tower should take you around about 30 minutes if you know what you're doing, and as you can see in the background right here, there are a bunch of very nice rewards that you can get for playing them. There are 2 versions of it, one normal and one Steel Path, and in my opinion both of them have pretty decent rewards, so even endgame players might choose to just, play both versions. On top of that, by playing the Descendia, you will get the Descendia-specific resource Mafika that you can then take to Roth in Albrecht's Cathedral in exchange for all the upgrades and arcanes that he has in his shop. Quick tip here on the side, if you bring a max range Limbo or Zaku into the mission, then you can use their 4th abilities to break all the containers in each and every floor, which can net you quite a nice bit of additional Mafika. And last, but definitely not least, let's talk about probably the single most popular endgame farm in Warframe, and that is of course Steel Path Void Cascade. First of all, the Void Cascade mode itself is unlocked once you get to the Zeraman 10-0, but I would highly recommend not playing it in normal mode, it's really not worth it. The Steel Path version is where it's at and where the good loot awaits. Now, also here on Void Cascade, this is quite the exhaustive topic, and I'm going to do my best to have a 2026 Void Cascade guide out as soon as possible. So let's focus on only the most important aspects here. The reason why Steel Path Void Cascade is so great is that as part of this game mode, there are a lot of Thrax enemies spawning. And those Thrax enemies then can drop you a bunch of different arcanes. Now, the kicker here is that Void Cascade, in contrast to most other endless game modes in the game, actually scales better the longer you stay in the mission. Because with the mission progressing and the enemy levels getting higher and higher, you will see ever-increasing spawn rates of those Thrax enemies. And the reason why you want to have all those arcanes is that you can take them to Lloyd in the Sanctum Anatomica and dissolve them into a resource called Phosphor. This Phosphor then can be used to exchange it for other relic packs, which can contain all types of relics that you get from other locations in the game. Then you either keep them for yourself or you sell them off for a bunch of platinum. Void Cascade is absolutely amazing, and what's even better is, because it is in Steel Path, you will be visited by acolytes every couple minutes, which drop you Steel Essence, and then those acolytes too will drop you other types of arcanes, which means even more Phosphor for you. Sometimes you even get an Omni Relic Fisher on the Void Cascade mission node, so you can do everything that I just mentioned while cracking all types of relics over and over and over again, and it's just absolutely insane. Big thank you again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Make sure to play it for free today on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile, and use my links in the description down below or the pinned comment. And remember, new players and those who haven't played in 6 months will receive the massive bonus pack I mentioned earlier on PC and consoles with premium vehicles and other goodies. It's limited time only, so don't miss your chance. Another massive shoutout goes also to Niels V, Demon Lord Zell, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Nost Linux Gaming, Turtlebeer, Undercanio 2, Scalabauza, Mihawki, Socrates the Almighty Rat, Leo Morizaki, Shadow Lockhart, Hantakas, Patrasader, Boom1, Mr. Games Plays, Zave, Awendai, Azengen, Quax, Henrik5984, Blue Eagle 98, Hearthwield, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. See you in the next one, and until then, as always, good loot.